Hey everyone, Ryan Young, KAATARO Jiu-Jitsu. I hope you're doing well. Today's question comes from Adam28171. Ryan, could you do a video on injuries sustained from doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I have young kids training in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm worried that starting so early, they're going to end up with arthritic fingers, arthritic neck, back injuries, as they get into their 20s and 30s. Basically, in what should be their prime fighting years, they already have decades of training and injuries, right? What's my advice? That's a good question. Here's what I would do. I would kind of think of it in these terms. Think of professional athletes today. In order for them to be professional athletes, even stuff like football or hockey, there's a lot of contact. How long did they need to be training? Usually from when they were kids, right? And so if they're playing tackle football from when they're young age, if they're playing lacrosse, which is also, there's a lot of contact in it, also hockey, a lot of contact in it, but yet they make it up to the professional ranks. So going with what you're asking me, they're going to get injured as kids, and in their prime years, they'll be so broken that they can't play. And in your case, in MMA. You would think so, right? Logically, that makes sense. But if that were really the case, would we have any pro athletes? At least pro athletes that you have to kind of balance the skill that's developed over the course of years of learning and training, combined with your body being able to handle the bumps and bruises of learning. Because as we know in jiu-jitsu, especially in the lower ranks, there are a lot of what we call learning injuries. I would say it's less so in the kids, but it's more so in the teens and adults. And the reason is because when you think about when kids fight, there's not a lot of damage that gets done when kids fight, meaning elementary school and younger. When they get to middle school, that's when they start to develop some strength and some power, such that taking a hit, maybe to the head or to the legs or something that can put an injury on them, put some hurt on them, at which point they're going to have to recuperate from it. So look at it how, for instance, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for, 89 is when I started, so here we are at 22, so 33 years I've been doing jiu-jitsu, and I've sustained a number of injuries from jiu-jitsu, right? My elbows have been popped. I gotten part of my bicep kind of torn a little bit. Maybe it's my shoulder, I don't know, from an Americana. I've had 2 knee surgeries. I've had a rib popped. I've had ankles and stuff popped. Never got any broken bones though. And one joke that I was talking about with one of our black belts, Zach, is that he's 40 years old and he's had, I think, 2 knee surgeries, ankle surgery. And he's busted up. And another one of our black belts, Mike, he's also busted up. His knees are always hurting, and he's 50 years old, and he's been training probably about 12 years or so, and Zach's been training about 11. Here's the thing that I tell people: can your body hold up long enough for you to earn your black belt? Right? It's kind of a race. Can my body hold up? Or am I learning my skills? What will happen first? My body will break sometimes before I can fully learn all the skills. With regard to your children, you're asking in their prime fighting years, let's say it's in their, from late teens, let's say 19 years old out to maybe 30. Training so young, they'd have sustained so many injuries that by the time they're of fighting age, they won't be able to fight because their body's busted up. Part of what makes somebody a good competitor is durability. And the other part of it is the mindset that tells them to keep going despite the injuries. A lot of pro football players, a lot of pro hockey players, a lot of pro athletes in general have injuries that go back years. However, they just simply train through them and they develop their skill despite their injuries. The person who is the best athlete isn't the one who doesn't have any battle scars on him. It's a person who has the battle scars, has learned to deal with them, and has learned to excel despite that. A lot of pro athletes, you may have a younger, inexperienced athlete that comes up against them, and the pro athlete still wins, even though they've sustained a number of injuries over the course of years. And part of it is because they've spent that extra time developing their knowledge and their wisdom in the art that they do, so that their skill level trumps their conditioning level. So that would mean that you have somebody who's younger, who's more conditioned, who's a better athlete, but yet doesn't have the knowledge that the pro does. And the pro still wins. That's why he's the pro. If your children are meant to be fighters, if that's what you want them to be, then it takes a number of factors. Number one is you may want them to fight, but they may not want to fight. On the other hand, if they want to fight and they always have wanted to fight and they continue wanting to fight as they get older to the point where they train through injuries and they train despite injuries and they keep sharpening that knife, so to speak, of their skill level, then they will become proficient and professional, hopefully. But pro athletes are such the minority, right? When you think of the 80-20 rule, and 20% of the people generate 80% of the results, you're talking people in the 1/10 of 1%, right? Not the top 20%, not the top 10%, not the top 1%, but the top 1/10 of 1%, maybe even less than that, because you got to think of 1/10 of 1%. What is that? 1 out of every 1,000. So, in a country with 10,000 people, that means you have 10 athletes. I don't know. I think it's even fewer than that. If you think about the top fighters, top MMA fighters, what percentage of the population are they? There are very few of them. Even in the world, there are very few of them. And then you have the ones that are at the top level, which is everyone, and let's say everyone that has a UFC contract. Maybe they have 400 people on contract. That's still a very, very small amount of people when you think about the population as a whole. And chances are every single one of them are busted up to a certain degree. The thing is, though, you cannot really worry about the injuries. The injuries will happen regardless. There's no way you can really stop an injury from happening. You can maybe prevent a particular incident from happening, but that doesn't mean that you're actually going to prevent them from ever getting an injury. An injury happens. And frankly, it's part of the learning process. You look at Rickson, for instance, right? In our world, right? Rickson, the greatest of all time. And if you ever meet him, his body is busted up. I think he's had a hip replacement or two, I'm not sure. His knees are bad. His neck is really bad. His back is really bad. Virtually every part of him hurts. And I can't say that he's broken every bone in his body. I would venture guess he hasn't, but I would say that almost every joint in his body has taken major abuse. When I was little, there's a motorcycle stunt rider named Evel Knievel. And he was better at jumping his motorcycle than anyone. But the joke, and it wasn't really a joke, the joke was that he had broken every single bone in his body at least once from crashing. He got good at what he did because he was able to keep jumping and keep surpassing what he did. But he paid a price for it. But he was durable enough to where he could heal and get back on the bike, and some would say stupid enough to do it again. But if he weren't durable, if he weren't as good as he was, proficient as he was at jumping that motorcycle, and stupid as he was, we wouldn't be talking about him today. So when I think of Rickson, and I asked him, I did ask him about that one day, about 3 years ago when we saw him. He apologized for having to take some time to stretch and warm his body up before we did anything. And he said, I have all these injuries. He says, but he goes, I'm fortunate to have them. He says, they're my blessing. And you kind of think about it, and it's funny because I did a video a while back when Dave and I were walking. We were in Sierra Vista, Arizona. We had to go take a walk to go find a Starbucks because there was no Uber or Lyft around to pick us up. And Dave, he has a funny walk. And I asked him about the injuries. You know, if Dave Kama of today were to meet Dave Kama from 35 years ago, 36 years ago when he started, and knowing that Dave Kama was going to be venturing into Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, what would he tell Dave Kama, you know, knowing what he knows? If future Dave Kama were to go back and meet, you know, 26-year-old Dave Kama, what would he say? He says, I wouldn't say a word to him. Really, you could have prevented all this pain and these injuries that you went through. You know, you have to put duct tape on your body to hold it all together, right? He goes, I would not have told him a thing, because we're meant to be where we are today, and I'm happy with my life. And I like the way things turned out, and the injuries are part of the story. And that's true. So with regard to your children, I know you want to protect them, but they're going to do what they want to do. So you cannot really prevent them. If they really love Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, you got them involved in it, right? If they really love it, they're going to keep doing it. If they don't love it, they're not going to do it after a certain point. They're going to, I'm done with it. And then I guess injuries are now mitigated, right? But if they don't do this, they're going to do something else, and something else will injure them. My mom kept me out of contact sports. You know, I had a single mom growing up. She kept me out of contact sports, but she did let me wrestle. She did let me take judo. Those are contact sports, right? Well, she didn't let me do football. That was her thing, no football. And here I am taking jiu-jitsu when I'm 21 years old, and I'd come home busted up. And she just looked at me and she'd go, I protected you all these years, and now you're coming home busted up, you know, through your own volition, right? My own choice. And I said, isn't that kind of weird? And that's the thing that I stuck with, jiu-jitsu. And my body hurts all over, but I wouldn't change a thing. So as far as your kids, just let them do whatever they love, and they will get whatever they're supposed to get coming to them, whether it be injuries or whatnot. And just, you know, let them have some fun. But if jiu-jitsu is what you want to have for them because of the self-defense aspects and you want them to know it, then yeah, they're going to have to know it. But as far as them being fighters, you know, that's not something I wanted for my kids, but some people do want it for their kids. To each his own. Anyway, I hope that kind of helped answer some of your questions and maybe some of your concerns. Anybody else, just go ahead and share the video if you like it. Hit the like button, subscribe, come visit us at one of our campuses, Kama Jiu-Jitsu Irvine, Kama Jiu-Jitsu Flower Mound, Texas, or Kama Jiu-Jitsu Austin, Texas. Also come see us online at KAMAJiujitsuOnline.com for our curriculum and our lesson plans. Anyway, take care. Happy training. Bye now.